Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Style Masterclass Podcast. I have a very special treat for you all today. I am talking to the lovely Bev Aron. And if you don't know who she is, you need to find out who she is because she's amazing. And I'm going to kick it over to her to give a more full introduction, and then we'll get into today's topic, which is actually all about legacy.
Amazing. Thank you, Judith. Yes, so I'm Bev. I am the Deep Dive Coach. I'm the founder of the Deep Dive Coach Institute, where we coach and train coaches to coach in a way that people have never been coached before, in terms of diving deeper into the source of whatever problem that they bring us.
Oh, I love that. And you've referred to yourself as a tertiary coach, and I think you got a little like ribbing about that, but I think it's a really good description for how coaches find you. They've sort of gone through coaching before. They've had some sort of certification before they find their way to you.
Correct. Yes. Usually they've either learned coaching or they've had a coach and they've had maybe another coach and they've had a therapist, and they still have this sense that there's something more. I could be feeling better, or there's something I haven't explored. And that's where we come in.
I love it. And you train coaches in your methodology, which I think actually is kind of a nice segue into our legacy conversation today, because I was trained by you as a master coach instructor. You were my master coach instructor. I was trained by you to be a master certified coach. Let me clarify that. And
well, I think you always were one. I just gave you the seal.
I got the stamp. But I remember one of the things that we talked about during coach training was I was treating some of my coaching sessions like depositions a little bit. There was a line of questioning happening, and it was not, I think, the softness that some of y'all see today, which I learned from Bev. But I think you have a legacy of all these coaches who are learning that softness and that deepening.
Oh,
How do you feel about that?
That feels very expansive, and I feel really gratified because my purpose, which I suppose you could say really in the context of this conversation, my legacy that I got one day during a hypnotherapy session was to bring peace to the world. And for a long time, I didn't know what that meant because, I grew up in South Africa where I was very disturbed by apartheid and the policies, but I knew I wasn't an activist and I was too afraid to go and get beaten up. And so I felt very powerless. And then I realized on reflection that the way that I'm bringing peace to the world, my mission is one thought at a time. So, to be able to offer that, thank you, to other coaches who are then going out and offering that to their people is everything for me.
So this thing is so interesting because I think sometimes we get like a mission, so to speak, or a vocation or a calling or a message, like your message, your mission is to bring peace to the world. Yeah. And then it's like, what do we do with that information? So you got that during a hypnosis session, and kind of what happened next for you? Because I'd imagine it wasn't like action mode. That doesn't even make sense in the context of what your mission is.
Right. It's true, because I didn't even know coaching then. I didn't even know that, we could change our thoughts to make ourselves feel differently. So I just kind of let it be there. I was pregnant with, I think, my last child, and I went for this hypnotherapy session because I didn't want to do all the testing, and this person could help you connect with your baby and, find if you need to. And so it was sort of peripheral that came to me. And then I just let it be there through, having my baby and being with my little kids. And then I discovered coaching. And then one day I was like, oh, that's how I'm going to bring peace to the world, one thought at a time. And just the idea of the ripples, very inspiring.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because you let it sit. Whereas I dare say I attract the type A action taker kind. So, I mean, you just let it sit. I'm like, what do you mean you just let it sit? Tell us everything. What do you mean by you just let it be there? Because I think it's so different from my own experience of when I get sort of a message that comes through of like, hey, this is a direction you could take.
So I think even before I discovered coaching, I had some sense that the feeling that we take our actions from will determine what we produce from it. And so I I think I was quite used to just naturally knowing that I will know the time to take action, and that will be the time. And taking it before would be premature, and so it wouldn't create what I wanted.
Oh my, okay.
It's the model, Judith.
I know. And I learned, it's so funny because we have, obviously I learned from Bev and we were both certified in the same school. We have this similar framework that we work through, which we call the model. And it's so interesting because you hear it in different ways. It's like, oh, that's right. That's how the world works. Oh, thank you for the reminder. So good to know. So like you found yourself like, now you have the model. Now you're kind of ready to help change one thought at a time and bring peace to the world. But you coached a long time before you actually created the Deep Dive Institute. So how did that come into formation?
So, I mean, bringing peace to the world one thought at a time started the minute I had my first client. And I would love to think about it. Like we would coach and then they would feel better and more peaceful. And I would love to think about the rest of the day. Maybe they didn't yell at their employees. Maybe they didn't honk at somebody on the street. And so, just kind of this piece sort of emanating out. And then, yes, so I coached for a while. I was from the beginning an instructor at the life coach school where we trained together and got more involved in teaching and sort of bigger audiences. Really, my gratitude is to the life coach school for enabling me to think bigger about myself, because my upbringing was very much, the girl gets like a sweet little job that she can do while the kids are at home, and the man goes out and, creates the legacy and does all the big things. And that was very much my mindset, and what I did for a long time. But I was fortunate to have mentors in various areas of my life who saw so much more for me and were quite relentless with me in constantly, offering me their vision.
Yeah.
So one day, yes.
Yeah, you go. Sorry.
Well, so one day, I think something came to me because I would keep arguing for, my limited vision. And one day, something just hit me that it really doesn't make sense when people are, arguing for so much more of me, then I would argue against them. It's like I was going to reap the benefits. And so that's when I started having, a bigger vision for my business and for my family and what I could bring and offer to the world.
Was it hard to transition from because I guess your background, your upbringing, like the girl has this cute little job and takes care of her family. Was that hard transition to make? Well, once you've decided, okay, I'm going to be more expansive in how I see myself. How was that in terms of your smaller community outside of the coaching realm?
Oh, I love that question. So it was a long process for me, lots of coaching, lots of work. And then my family, my smaller community, so supportive, so excited. Everybody just like proud and thrilled and no problems at all with it. It was done with so much joy.
I think that's so fun. And I wonder if they took their cue from you.
Yes, probably. Yes. I love that idea.
And here's why I say that, because I had a similar experience. Like, and you coached me, everybody coached me. It was like a team effort of all the coaches coached me on transitioning from being a full-time lawyer to a full-time life coach.
Yeah.
And I remember once I had made the decision that I was so excited that I feel like everyone else took their cue, and all the terrible things that I thought might occur actually didn't. My law firm was actually very gracious and were excited and wrote an email to my parents to tell my parents that they were the safety net in the event that anything should occur. And it was just this loving send off. But I think sometimes when we're excited, we've made the decision so concretely, then everyone else can get on board. I don't know if you had a similar experience.
I totally agree, because we offer them our thoughts about it, which are so congruent. And, kind of what we were saying in the beginning, you waited until you were solid in your thinking about it to take the action. And then you offered them the narrative, and everyone just was like, it felt so good. Why wouldn't they adopt it?
Yeah. Oh, I love. So like, how do we distill that down for anyone who's like, because I'm sure someone's listening who's maybe gotten that little inkling, right? Or that mission that there's something more, there's something else. and they maybe are sitting on it too, not taking immediate action. Maybe they're feeling
Yeah.
itchy about that, but they haven't. And
Yeah.
what would we say to them in terms of like getting to that next place where they've just make
Mm,
the decision?
mm. So the first thing I would say is don't berate yourself for being where you are, because that just makes us feel terrible. And then we're never going to get to the next stage. You are where you are because that's where you're supposed to be. And then, I'm a great believer that everyone needs a life coach. So I think what people should do is hire you, if that's something that you would help people with, which I think it is, seriously, to get past the barriers, because the barriers are all in our mind. And my philosophy is the mind that created the problem, our brain is a closed system, very hard for that same mind to find the barrier thoughts and also find how they're wrong. So I think an outside perspective is the way to go, just to help kind of move along. Also amazing to have an ally who will see you in that new place. And sometimes you can just borrow a bit of that belief.
I want to pause here because I think this is a really important topic. I think sometimes, and I find myself attracted sometimes to coaches who are more, how do I put it? Just their energy is not allyship necessarily. Their energy is more challenging and pushing and sometimes convincing or a little cajoling to get me to the next stage because their belief in me is so strong. And I do appreciate that energy, but I feel like your energy is not quite that like it's intense because you're quite intense actually in your own way, but it's not the same kind of energy. There's an allyship, there's a softness that you display that I think is interesting. So tell me a little bit more about how you see the role of a coach as sometimes an ally as well.
Yeah, I think that when we as coaches are not attached to our client's movement, then the allyship is I see it all for you. Whatever you tell me you want to do, I absolutely know you can see it. And I also don't care whether you ever do it or not.
Okay, that's so important, y'all. And here's why I'm like pausing, and me and Bev are just slow nodding at each other if you're not watching us on video, because I think a lot of the people I coach, they're leaders, they're mentors, they are, in charge of other humans. And I think we're so committed to a particular outcome sometimes. So it's interesting that there is this place where we could take that role and not be attached to the outcome being particular.
Yeah. And not to be, loving and soft, but because I think for myself, if somebody seems very committed to me doing something differently, I start to feel pressure. And when I feel pressure, I shut down a little bit or I take action, but it's kind of like anxious action. And so that's the reason not to create a situation of pressure, because I think it makes it less likely that we will step into our huge magnificence.
So you teach this in
I
deep dive
do.
training. Tell me more about this, because I've observed you do it. I know coaches who've come out of deep dive and are just like, I will never be the same. And it was amazing. And like their minds are like their world's a little rocked in like a very cool way, because I think this
Wow.
seeps down into them in a way that just wasn't they weren't ready to receive it yet, whatever the case may be. So tell us a little bit more about what goes on in there. I feel like there's like a mystery door and there's this wonderful entrance. Like walk us in a little bit.
That's awesome. So, yes. So, I mean, I don't actually know how the magic happens. What I did was I just put everything I've learned and all the ways that I coach into a program as an offering. And then we all just coach each other all the time. And people go out and coach their own clients. Also, you have to have paying clients to be in the program because it's an advanced program. And then slowly the shift happens, and is like a little bit kind of sort of alchemical in that I don't know exactly how. And sometimes it's not during the training. Sometimes it's a year later. But it's just this really emphasizing of we see their magnificence. You must see it. Otherwise, please don't coach them. But also, you have to not care. whether they see it or if they get it. But just coaching from seeing it, I think really elevates the coaching situation.
Yeah. I love that. I love that so much because I love doing vision work and future self work and sitting with a client and being like, but what about this? Like I was on a podcast this morning and someone was talking about their version of a luxurious life. And I was like, okay, but when you get on the plane, like, do you change your pajamas like into pajamas? Or do you stay in your street clothes? Is there like a special toiletry bag just for the plane? And she was like, Judith, what is happening? Like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, like, have you thought about those possibilities? Like, if we're going to do Lux Life, let's do Lux Life. And it was just so fun to sit with her in that. And
Oh,
we
so
have,
fun.
I think we get the gift of sitting with people before their transformation happens in it with them.
Yeah, you gave her that experience, which makes it so much more likely that she's going to go create it.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
So good.
So there's some alchemical magic. We'll just call it magic. Why not? That happens in that container. Like, and obviously we started by hinting that this was going to be a call about legacy. Like, where do you see that going? Like, what do you think the ripple effect of it will be? And kind of what's your vision around that?
Around the advanced training.
Yes.
Training. Yes. So, in terms of legacy, that's what I see. I see all these coaches that I'm training are bringing peace to the world, one thought at a time. So it's just kind of this like huge movement. And also, I think offering a counter to the sort of more, I don't want to say aggressive coaching, but maybe the more sort of cajoling, challenging, cerebral kind of coaching that happens, where sometimes we think, oh, just because the person saw that the way they were thinking is not helpful, we're like, well, why aren't you over it? And so in deep dive is a recognition that it's more a process, and sometimes we have to go into our bodies and find all the stuck bits, and we're just up for all of it. We're just available. Whatever you got hiding in there, let's do it.
Because I think that's an important question. I would just like, you asked it and you said it, like, why aren't you over it?
Yeah.
And I think for some of us we're self-help junkies, maybe we'll even say, we've done all the things, we have the therapists, we have the modalities and the different things, and it comes back down to, and then why aren't you over it?
Yes, we do it to ourselves as well. Absolutely. Yes. So that is definitely one of the things I would love to be my legacy, that we eliminate that completely from the self-help world.
How are we going to do that, Bev?
By what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Every talk I give, every teaching I give is always designed to stop us from using this work that is, truly life-giving against ourselves and against our clients. It's the message.
I love that. Because I think that the turmoil we create, I think that's the worst kind. And I now I'm so much more aware of it, but I think so many of us aren't even aware of it. And then we come to that question and then we get stuck.
Yes. Yes. Totally. Agree. So
what
spread the message, everybody.
Yes.
You're only going to be over it when you're over it. The purpose of the work is to keep growing and exploring.
How do we wait, though? And I think this is why I asked this, because we did lead in with, we have the inkling and then we wait. And then maybe we've done all this work and we're not over it yet, but we should be over it, right? So the waiting game, the middle squishy bits.
Yeah.
What do we do while we wait?
Well, the squishy bits are where the magic is.
Sit on that, y'all. And Shannon, who's my VA, that's our quote for this week. Thank you very much. Just pull that out.
Perfect. Perfect. If you think about it, the journey is so beautiful and so opening. And sometimes when we get there, we're like, okay, good. Getting there. That's what we want to appreciate. That's what we want to luxuriate in. I mean, it's so fun, right? When you find something that you discovered that you didn't know about yourself that was holding you back. It's the most fun thing ever.
You know what? I think it's fun now. I think I would give in more to dismay early on. And like, oh, I can't believe I was thinking that for so long. That's where my brain would go. And now I'm like, oh, like I can find amusement in it. At first, absolutely not. Yeah.
And then that's the work, right? Though that like the squishy bit there is, why am I always going to dismay when I'm on this journey that I put myself on? No one told me to. I chose it. I wanted to go dig. Why am I going to dismay?
Yeah.
And then
For
that's the
any of you,
discovery.
yeah, for any of you, like you were in a coaching scenario and a thought is shown to you, right? Because we're one sentence at a time. And you're like, oh, I can't believe I'm thinking that. I think it's okay early on that you end up word like dismay perhaps, but this is the squishy bit, right? So just even that thought we were just offering you, this is the squishy bit. If your tendency is to go towards dismay or disappointment that you haven't gotten over it yet, that's the squishy bit.
Yeah. Another thought we could offer is, of course.
Mm.
Of course, that's what I was thinking. I was taught it. It was shown to me. It was modeled to me. It served me until now. For whatever reason, of course, that's where I would go. I just find that very settling. Oh, yeah, of course.
Of course. Yeah. So good. Okay. So we know in terms of business what that legacy is going to be. And I don't know that you separate it out this way, but just for the purposes of this conversation, is there, and I know, so I'm just going to invite you to talk about it in this way. There's a personal legacy goal that you have that you've shared with me and you've shared in other containers we're in. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then we can piece it apart and talk about it in different angles.
Yes, for sure. So about 8 months ago, I think, actually even 6 months ago, I decided that I want to leave my family $20 million when I die. And that will be it's not the only personal legacy. That will be one personal legacy. The other will be, of course, how I behave and how I think and how to be in the world, which I got from my parents. But for the purposes of this conversation, I know you wanted to talk about the $20 million goal that I came up with. That I just love the idea that it'll be my legacy, like the mom's legacy of leaving that for my children. It's very exciting.
You gave a definition of legacy that I think is expansive. And I actually do think it's worth talking about because in my program, we talk about wealth and legacy in that more expansive way, the way we behave, the way we show up in the world, a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of tools. I mean, you're obviously sharing a wealth of tools that you've created in your program and to all the coaches you coach. But I do think that's an important component. And like, what are your thoughts about that more expansive vision of wealth and legacy and maybe how they're tied together?
Yes, I think that when it's a more expansive vision of it, then it would include things like, this is one that I got from my mom, actually, that now everyone in my family knows, including my housekeeper. She, if I could just tell a little story.
Yes, please do.
When she passed, we heard the story from in Toronto, we have Grocery Gateway. It was kind of the precursor to Instacart, and she would order groceries from it, and people would bring it. And then one day, the manager told us that he wanted to come because why are all the drivers fighting to come to this address? And apparently, they would come, and there would always be like tea and drinks and cookies for them, and a $5 bill. And I was like, that's a legacy that you and nice, like on the nice plates and on the nice couches. So I think when you have a general sense of sort of the wealth and abundance in this world, then it just shows up in all the small places, an abundance of kindness or an abundance of a smile. Or my dad's was that he never said no to a charity request. You know how you get all these things in the mail all the time, right? And of course, he had some that were important to him that he supported, but he just taught us you never say no. And so, those kind of big ones. And so then creating so much wealth from that, I think means you always invest in ways that feel very ethical and very moral. When you hand money over to people, you treat them not like somebody that you're like giving something to, so, and that they owe you, but that you value them and what they're going to be doing with your money as much as you value the money that you're going to get from them.
Okay. There's like, so my brain went, because you get like 500. I'll try and simmer it back down. I want to talk about the little act of kindness, though, on your mom's part, right? Or your dad never saying no. I mean, obviously, I think you probably will pass those along, but are there some that, in addition to that, or you've taken that and run with it in your own particular way? And what would your acts of kindness look like in your version of this?
So I think it would be, yes, I guess because I'm a coach, so my acts of kindness, that are beyond those would be kind thoughts. So whatever people will say to me, and I don't do this all the time, but the goal is to teach my children how to do this also, is whatever is offered, is the offering back is an offering of a kind thought. So something silly, right? Like, I didn't do well in that, or I wish I would have done that differently. I bet you did it the best you could have at the time, for example.
Yeah.
Kindness to self, and then kindness about others. Probably having a bad day, probably thought that was going to be the best way to do it for you. So that, but mostly the self-talk, just modeling it and offering it, and then hoping that, I think if we offer people like a million thoughts and they pick up 3, hopefully it'll be those 3. And then they'll go and continue to offer that to people. And then that becomes a legacy that would be just amazing to leave, that we can all do, no matter how much money we have.
Yeah. Beyond, I mean, and I do want to talk about the $20 million goal because I think it's very cool, but I also, I want to make sure no one mishears us, and their only takeaway is that. I also want us to just be really, like, you and I both think very expansively with regard to this. And while I think $20 million will definitely have utility, and there's some very cool things around that, there's also this very expansive way of looking at a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of kindness, a wealth of teeny tiny deliberate acts of kindness that have an amazing ripple effect. And those are equally worthwhile. And we don't have to measure these things up based on monetary value alone.
100%. 100%.
Tell me, how did you arrive at the $20 million monetary legacy goal?
So it started with my oldest daughter got married, and her husband was going to be in medical school in a city an hour away from us. And they didn't have income, so the 2 sets of parents were going to help them. And so we were thinking about where they'd live. And I remember I said to my husband, I got this inspiration. So we could give 100 grand to a stranger, or we could give it to ourselves. And so we bought a townhouse through my business, and then, we give them the money, then they pay it back to us in rent. And I realized while we were going this transaction, because after the down payment, the mortgage that I pay, or they would have had to pay, and the rent is very similar. So I said to him, so the difference between an owner and a renter is the down payment. And then a few months later, we were I held an amazing equine coaching retreat for some of my deep dive coaches. And we brought in yoga twice a day. So sometimes the owner of the studio came, amazing. And sometimes her teacher, Megan, equally amazing. And then I had the same realization. So the difference between Kayla and Megan was the down payment, all the startup costs for the yoga studio, both amazing. So I got this idea. I want my kids to be able to be the owners. I want them to be very talented and very motivated and work for it. But what if I could give them this kind of leg up that they could always be an owner? And then I was at a life coach school event, the school where we both train, where things are often quite outrageous. And I seem to often have outrageous ideas. And we were all dropping our possibility. And I realized, I'm going to leave my kids $20 million when I die. That's what I'm going to do. I believe enough in my potential to create it one way or another. And the idea of, I have 4 children, each of them having $5 million to be the owner of whatever it's going to be, just feels unbelievable to me.
It's so cool. All that's going in my head is there's I don't know if it's a psalm or a proverb. It's like a borrow, not a lender, not a borrower be.
Yes.
Yeah. The head and not the tail, above and not below, right? All of those kinds of thoughts. But literally, like, creating a scenario where that will be true for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's happened since then is it's got my mind working in very creative ways and talking to people who I would normally never talk to, and in ways that I would never talk to them also. It's like I just made myself into an investor with that decision because I'm not going to make all that in my business. So that meant I realized, oh, then I have to invest money. So then I had to take on this whole new identity of being an investor, which is so fun. So that's what we're doing right now.
I want to talk about, like, does it ever feel like incredulous? And like, I think incredulity could be good and bad. It has its funniness when you're carving a new identity. Like, what's that experience been like for you if that has cropped up?
Yes. I mean, incredulous all the time. Like I was at this, fundraising meeting for a startup and I'm walking in and I'm like, how is this that I'm here? But incredulous in the most amazing way. Like, how is this my life? I just made it happen that suddenly I'm being dined by somebody from a startup who wants some money from me. It's ridiculous. And it just started with a thought that I didn't dismiss. I said it out loud, which I think is really important in public. And I did it again when we were at an event together. And then the energy, it's like the energy creates, because then actually what you did a beautiful thing. I said it out loud. And then you came to me with your friend who's an investor and said, we're having dinner and I want to introduce you. And if I had never said it out loud, I would have met him. And he just blew my mind open in all the ways.
He always, shout out to Dinesh. We love you because
yes.
Yeah, he came into my group, he came into Modern Charm School and did a class on real estate investing. And afterward, the chat box was just like mind blown. This feels so possible now. And literally he came in and he shared his whole story, his background. He has a very fascinating background. We'll leave a link in the show notes so you can go check out Dinesh's stuff if you'd like. So you all know who we're talking about. And he's not going to mind. I'll let him know we're giving him a shout out. But like he gave his history and just kind of dropped the possibility of like, here's what could be possible for you. And here's what it actually looks like. He walked us through a deal. Like, so it became very real and very normal. It wasn't like this esoteric concept that we were like, oh, it's possible that one day maybe. He was like, no, like here's a thing and here's what it looks like. And literally walked us through that. It was such a gift.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Right. Like, so he created the energy around that in a way that somebody else could grab unless they had thoughts that would stop them. That's all that's in the way.
And then that's where we coach on the thoughts, the one thought at a time.
Yep. That's exactly right.
Let's say someone got a little inkling and they have a little baby inkling hanging out. Like we'll just say it's like a little orb of inkling hanging out. And they're at this place. Maybe they haven't said it out loud.
Yeah.
Because they're having the thoughts, the sentences in their brain. What would you say to them?
So I think something that you could offer yourself as something to reflect on or think about is, why not? Why not me? I mean, there's so many stories, right, of people who have come from probably way worse and way less than you, who have exceeded anybody's ideas of success. So why not me? That's what I would go wondering. And your brain will offer you all the reasons why not, and just keep saying yes. Yes, true, and also still, why not me?
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. That was so fun.
So tell the humans where they can find you, because I know y'all just got a little taste. So you definitely want to go find Bev. You want to be in her newsletter because she sends these amazing videos out once a month. And I actually look forward to them. I'm like, has it dropped yet? Has it dropped yet? And then I'll do the exercise. Seriously, y'all. So where can we follow you and get on your newsletter and all the good things? And of course, loves, we're going to leave you links in the show notes for everything. Okay.
Well, thank you for that, Judith. That made me want to cry. So thank you. So my website is bevaron.com. And what all you will get from me if you sign up, I will not fill your email inbox, is, as you said, once a month, I send out a short video with an exercise for the month on how to grow deeper in your own work. And I'll also let you know if I'm running any programs. I do some small group coaching programs. Sometimes I do big trainings or advanced certifications. I do some private coaching, but I usually am full with that. But yeah, I'll let you know about the good stuff, but mostly it's the videos. So yeah, that's where you find me. That's where I am.
I love it. And I've actually teased Bev that she has the most gangster landing page ever. Because it's so simple and it's so like You're invited. I'll keep you posted. Love you so much. And it's like, that's it. It's so good.
Thank you. I love that description. Awesome.
It's so good. All right, y'all. So that's bevaron.com. And then we'll leave a link in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Bev. This was so much fun.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's the best. I love you.
Love you too. All right, y'all. We are out.